Hey, good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Glad to be back. Thank you to some of our great folks that are tuning in regularly and giving me feedback. I'm glad to be back. 9:45 East Coast time. I jump on here for 15 or so minutes to talk with you. Thank you, especially to the folks that send me feedback, give me ideas through social media. I'm on Parler, Gab, also Twitter at Eagle Ed Martin, and Parler and Gab, I think it's at Ed Martin. And then, of course, Facebook Live. Some of you watching there, Ed Martin Live on Facebook Live. And then over on YouTube, it's the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles channel on YouTube. So thank you for tracking us down. Any of the ways through all those places you can get to me. If you go to proamericareport.com, proamericareport.com, I'll do that there. You can see that one. You can also email me through that website. That's an easy way to email me. So jump in there. Okay. Hey, today you'll see the title of this. This is an important topic I want to talk to you about. It is the power of self-censorship. I will recount for you a long conversation, really good conversation I did on a television town hall last night that Armstrong Williams hosted over on Sinclair Television Network. I'll tell you about that, and then we'll talk about big tech in just the moment we're in. It's extraordinary. But let us first not forget, it is always good to do the Pledge of Allegiance when we start out, and here we go. Stand, if you will, and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me for the pledge, and we go back to our previous programming. So last night I was on a town hall with Armstrong Williams and three other panelists. And I apologize for not remembering their names. I meant to write it down. I will track it down. One man is a professional sort of PR guy, crisis communications guy, impressive fella. Another woman is an owner of a bridal salon. And the third guest, along with me, is the mayor of a small town in Florida. And so the conversation was actually about the cancel culture, because the bridal shop owner was targeted by the cancel culture because she had worked with one of the Republican canvassers back in that got some attention back in November. Remember, up in Detroit area, Wayne County might be the county. Anyway, one of the canvassers, Republicans, who said, "I'm not sure this was done right." Well, that woman was targeted. Her name fails me, which is just as well. She doesn't need more notoriety. I don't think she actually held up to the pressure very well, but she had used this bridal salon and tweeted about how great it was. Her family had, or her friend had, and so the cancel culture thought, "Oh my gosh, it's owned by a person who is a family member of this woman," and they went and attacked her. Now, they attacked the wrong lady, because the woman that owned the bridal shop happens to be the national president of the Association of Bridal Shop Owners. I didn't know there was such a thing. It's great that they band together. And she fought back, and she beat back the cancel culture, but she said it was really scary. Now, I pause to tell you, how often do you hear that the people who have to be afraid are people who are sort of MAGA direction, right? You don't hear a lot of people who tell you that they were targeted by conservatives and feared for their life. It just doesn't happen. It's people that are to the center or center right, or in this case, mistakenly thought to be MAGA, that have to fear. The bridal shop owner said she was leaving her home with they would go in the buddy system because they were afraid for their physical safety. Their business was targeted. Anyway, you get the point. So we're having this town hall discussion, and everybody's agreeing that the number one thing that we can do is speak up. And that one of the things we have to encourage ourselves is to speak up and to not be self-censoring. Now, and this went around the table, and I had my own opinion. I made the points some of the points I just made to you, and I was telling Armstrong, that you're missing the story here. They're not targeting left-wing outfits. They're not. Every now and then you see a canceled person who is canceled on the left, but generally they're canceled sort of by the left for the left's rules. So you get a 25-year-old woman who's about to become an editor for a magazine or a website who, when she was a younger person, tweeted something that was either racist or homophobic or something. And so the left has to abide by their rules, which is target people consistent with those things that they want to believe you have to be targeted on. Now, forget about the truth of it. Just make sure. So it's not really clear to me the left ever gets targeted, but I made those points. But the other three, and I agreed, of course, was that there's an epidemic of self-censorship. But I went on to point out the fact that the self-censorship, again, is happening in one direction. And overnight, I've been thinking about it since the conversation. And I did bring this up very modestly in the town hall discussion. I did say, the real question is, how dominant is big tech at controlling what we see, and therefore what we know, and therefore what we do, right? If I can control what you see every day, as a father, I make sure that my kids see the scripture every day. They see my wife and I, they see things that are, I think, important to them because it's every day. I mean, nobody's perfect. I mean, they have to see, that we're the kinds of ups and downs that families have. But, generally you try to have them see things every day because what they know is that they're loved and they're part of a family. And then what they do is they go out with confidence, hopefully, in the world. And that's is a minor example. But big tech controls what we see and what we therefore know, and therefore what we do, or at least what we believe. And I brought this point up, and overnight I've been kind of almost anxious about it because we have these examples now. The one that Project Veritas has highlighted is Facebook has a group of people, it sounds like, that are going to persuade or shape how people react to certain topics. And I haven't seen all these videos. I mostly read about it, actually, the Project Veritas. But it gives you a glimpse into the power of the people at, say, Facebook that can control what is allowed to come up. My friend Mark Ludwig, who is a really impressive guy, he's a Missourian, but he's now a national figure because he loves his son. And in the midst of a terrible divorce, he realized that he was losing access to his son, and he fought back. And he has this organization, the Association for Shared Parenting. He's very impressive, and he relies on Facebook a lot. And he was on Mike Huckabee's show talking about his issues, and the other night, and it's being shadow banned on Facebook. Why? I'm not sure why, but I suspect that he's controversial. He's critical of our judicial system. He's critical of the family services system. Mark has got some real concerns, but he's mostly, if you meet him or if you even see him, he's just a loving guy. He's not a mean guy. He's not even a cantankerous Irishman like I am. He's just a peaceful guy who loves his son. Loves his son and is just torn about it and is willing to fight hard for everybody. Anyway, so the power of big tech is just extraordinary. And what it really is, again, back to this conversation last night, is big tech can shape who and how goes forth to speak. Because it's one thing on a television program, a national television program for the mayor of a Florida town and a bridal salon owner who's the leader of a national organization and a professional PR guy and a guy like me who's trained as a lawyer and as an advocate and has been on TV all the time. It's one thing for the four of us to say, yes, speak out. Well, you can do it. Everyone should speak out. And I even heard General Flynn. I recorded with General Flynn yesterday a podcast of him talking about his life's experience, which we'll release later on in the week, and hearing him talk, and he's just encouraging people. Now's the time to stand up. Now's the time to not be afraid. But here's my point. The power of, say, Amazon, the power of Google, the power of social media, big tech, the power of them to make you feel worse about what you're doing or better about what you're doing, that's profound. And we are human beings. So we're going to be feeling the reward or the pain of what we're doing in real time. That's part of what the dynamic that's happening. So it's one thing to say, beware of self-censorship. And I often refer back to the essay that I admire so much, The Power of the Powerless, which was written in the late 1970s about Soviet communism and the pressure on the community, the Czech Republic. It later became the Czech Republic. And that people there, the late Václav Havel describes there was a expectation that grocery store owners put up a sign that said, "Workers of the world unite." And it sounds relatively benign. Who's against workers of the world, whatever. And he was describing how the communists didn't say do that. You realized you needed to behave in a way that signaled correctly, and that the people would come because they saw that you knew to signal correctly. And it became a sort of culture that was oppressive. By the way, walk around an urban center with a diversity of churches, as I do, where I work in Washington, D.C., and you'll see churches with signs up, Black Lives Matter, all banners up everywhere, Black Lives Matter. Why? Maybe they really believe it. Maybe they really believe in that movement, which has been, I think, a very discredited movement, but it's a signal, right? It's a signal. Oh, well, who's against lives mattering? So we're watching this happen in our culture. And here, another quick example. Simon & Schuster canceled Josh Hawley's book deal. Because why? Well, on one level, it could be because they thought he was bad. But I tend to think that Simon & Schuster looked up and said, if he's being canceled on media, if he's being targeted by media, by the big tech, we're not going to be able to sell books. So it's better for us to join the parade of people who are signaling that we get the problem and be able to sell books, because a month later, Simon & Schuster signed Mike Pence to write 2 books for multi-million dollars. So at a certain point, what you realize is the oppressiveness of the ruling class is changing behavior, whether you realize it or not. Which brings me to this point. We have to be beware of self-censorship. We have to be fearless. But the real challenge right now is what we don't know that's happening. So, for example, in the 1970s, the late Phyllis Schlafly, for whom I worked and who's such a great writer, if you go to phyllisschlafly.com, you can see a lot of her stuff there. And you can, when you go there, you can see her columns way back in time. And one of her columns back when I guess it was the 70s, could have been the 80s. I might be getting it wrong. I'm picturing the text is a typewriter text. So it was before word processing was too common. Phyllis did her texts on a typewriter. And it was about a book that had been taken off the bookshelves in the big 3 chains of bookstores. I had Barnes and Noble was one. I forget the other. It's not Crown Books, but there were 3 chains at the time that had about 30% of the market for books. And Phyllis was writing about how if they're taking the book off the bookshelves and you're missing it, that's a big deal. And we should be appalled by that. And we should be saying, why are they doing that? And we should care about it. And we should buy the book other places and all. She wasn't calling for government regulation, actually. She was just saying we should care. It's wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. That's too much power. But she did slip in a description at the end, which is the books that were taken off the shelves that you could see, the ones that were famous. This one was a famous book. What about the ones that never get there? Right? That's the real problem. What about the Josh Hawley? Josh Hawley's famous, but what about somebody who's writing a book right now, who's self-writing a book and wants to write about some conservative principle, or wants to write about some aspect of election fraud, or wants to write about something that they understand about the Wuhan virus, or whatever it is? And they'll never get even to self-publish if it's blocked by Amazon. I was talking to Gwen Kelly from our staff, and she was mentioning that when she posts certain things to social media about COVID, there'll be a link at the bottom that says, to find out more about COVID, click here. And if you click there, you get the CDC and other things, meaning they're sort of making sure that they're policing what is put out there to tell you, here's some more ideas, here's some more input, here's some, maybe I'm adding this, but they're saying, here's something that's smarter than this guy or what he's posting. So we have this epidemic of self-censorship. That's true. And we have to get more and more leaders who are not afraid to speak the truth. I think you're seeing more and more of that. But we also have to acknowledge that the system, the narrative machine, big tech, big media, and big government, is being used very, very with great sophistication to shape what we see and what we know, and therefore what we do or believe. It's a huge threat to our republic, and it's ongoing all around us. So yes, be strong. Yes, don't self-censor. Find the paths to go forward and continue to raise your voices. That's true. We have to do it. But in addition, acknowledge the problem. And I won't talk about it today because I've gone a long time. But down in Florida, Ron DeSantis and the Florida legislature, they've signed a law that gives them some angle to go and say, hey, we need to protect our consumers who are consuming big tech. Let's take a look at this. We'll see how it succeeds. It's hard to understand yet how one state can do this, but at least they're raising their voice. And I'm sure Ron DeSantis will be paying a price. I'm sure that they will find ways to make sure that what you see about Ron DeSantis is not what is necessarily the truth. You know, they'll put preference on criticisms or preference on failings or whatever. And over time, what they're hoping is what you see will become, what you know, and it will shape what you do and believe. So a lot of threats. But for now, let's be strong on not self-censoring. Find those opportunities to continue to raise your voices. Remember, back to one thing, I go back to this idea is sink your roots into what you know and believe. And then find the community in which you can communicate and get encouragement and get comfort even for when you go out there and say the right things and condemn the people that are doing cancel culture, condemn the people that are dishonest, and it's got to become a habit. Courage is a habit. Courage is a habit. Okay, everybody, we'll talk tomorrow. Great. Please visit proamericareport.com. Sign up for the daily email. Comes out at 8 a.m. East Coast time, 5 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll talk later.